So this is not what we had planned. This isn't the Christmas Eve that any of us was probably hoping for. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still wonderful, it's still beautiful, but it is not the one that we were hoping for, probably. I mean, it's better than last year, for sure. Remember that? When everybody was stuck at home with just the promise of a vaccine in the new year. So we're making progress, but it's clear that we are still in the midst of a pandemic, aren't we? Your program says that the Reverend Tammy Hobbs Meraki is supposed to be up here preaching tonight, but obviously that's not true. You see, one of her kids came down with something last weekend, and they did what you do. They took them to the doctor and got a test, and sure enough, it came back positive for COVID, so their whole family is now in quarantine. Now, they're all vaccinated, and those who can have received their booster shots, so no one is terribly sick, thanks be to God and modern medicine. But it's still sad and disappointing and frustrating because it scrambled yet another set of carefully laid plans. But that's become a very familiar story, hasn't it? I know all of you have had to rethink all of your plans as well. But it's true that we keep learning more as we go along. We keep getting better at managing all of this with additional booster shots and rapid testing and continued masking and bundling up when you come to church so that we can have the windows and doors open for ventilation. And thank you for doing all of those things, because all of those things actually help. The miracle of it all is that in spite all of it, in spite everything that is going on, Christmas came anyway. Here it is. Merry Christmas. Christmas does that every year, doesn't it? No matter what is going on in the world, Christmas always happens. And that's really the message, I think, for tonight. Jesus comes as a baby, and babies, as you probably know, don't really care whether we're ready for them or not. Babies come whenever they are ready to come. And likewise, God doesn't really care if we're ready. God doesn't wait until everything is in place and everything is in order to show up. God doesn't wait for us. God acts. God enters the world just like infants do, fully and completely, and whether we are ready for it or not. Christmas is here. Now, I know that there's a lot that is wrong in our world. You know that too. But the world that Jesus was born into was even more disheartening than our world is. The world he was born into was much more impoverished than ours is, way more disease-ridden than ours, considerably more violent than ours. But God showed up anyway. Jesus was born into that world, and Christmas came. God enters the world, however chaotic it might be, with this incredible vulnerability, the vulnerability of a newborn. Have you ever seen a newborn? Vulnerable. They need so much care and attention. They require others to take care of them because they can't do it themselves. And that's part of what I think is so miraculous about all of this. God came into the world as a tiny baby and immediately began to invite others to help, invite others into the work of bringing about change. That invitation started with a young woman named Mary who thankfully said, "Yes, here am I." Then the invitation went to a not quite sure about it father, but he played along. And then shepherds and wise men. Later, the invitation went to fishermen and tax collectors, women and men who many people thought were outsiders. Still later, the invitation extended to Pharisees and rulers and saints and martyrs, and eventually it extended all the way to you and me. God invites all of us into this work. The world was not ready for it, but Christmas came. The world is still not ready for it, but Christmas still comes every year. Christmas arrives to remind us that God entered the world, that God keeps entering the world, no matter what is going on. God enters the world and invites us to help, invites us to do our part to bring peace, to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly with one another and with God. So this is not the Christmas Eve that we might have hoped for, or the one that we planned for. And yes, there is still an awful lot that is wrong in the world. But the real message of Christmas is that God enters this world, as broken and damaged as it is, as full of tragic beauty and unspeakable grace. God enters this world whether we are ready for it or not. God comes to the world just as we all do, with vulnerability, with hope, with innocence, with trust. God comes to us and invites us to join in this great work of redemption, this great work of reconciliation, invites us to walk the way of love alongside of Jesus, invites us to be salt and yeast, to shine light, to scatter darkness, to prepare the way, to bring peace and declare good news. And so, friends, tonight I say, be of good cheer, because ready or not, Christmas is here. Amen.